everybody. Welcome to Around the Lens Reviews. On this episode, we're talking about the documentary film Love Plus War, which is a really great film that documents sort of the life and times of Lyndsey Addario. She's an award-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist. And in this documentary, directed by Jimmy Chin and Elizabeth Chai Vasarle, I'm sorry, probably butchered that. Uh, we follow her as she goes through, her life documenting conflict photography, conflict photojournalism in places like the Ukraine, as well as dealing with home life issues and trying to be a mother. That's a big focus of the documentary. And, first impressions, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Then we'll have like a little spoiler chat towards the end. But, ultimately, I thought this was a really compelling film that captured the duality that we as photojournalists face in many instances, trying to, manage both a home life and also work balance. And it was just really interesting to see that sort of inside look, and not only in terms of what a photojournalist faces, but also what a female photojournalist or a woman photojournalist faces in their life and trying to manage, not only trying to get the shot, but also dealing with sexism and other things like that. Zach, what were your first kind of impressions and thoughts of the film?
I really, I think exactly the film does the best job that I've seen. I've watched a couple documentaries about, photojournalists, male, female, whatever, and like that kind of try to touch on the family side and the fact that you're gone for weeks at a time. The fact that like, they know you're. It's not just like, oh, I went on a work trip and then something bad happened. It's like, no, there's something bad happening all the way over there, and that's specifically where I'm going on the work trip. It's like I think probably the only thing that's even close to similar is for some first responders, but not for the length of time. But like, I guess firefighters would do that in America, or soldiers going overseas, and kind of like that's kind of the only comparison. We have a ton of those films, but obviously very different dynamic of, you kind of sign up for that. It's like if you marry a soldier who kicks down doors, like who's in infantry or whatever, it's like, yeah, that's going to happen. But if you sign a, you fall in love with a photojournalist or something like that who's probably shooting protests in America or events or whatever, and then suddenly they become a war photographer. Yeah, that's a different story. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And we see that, gripping war. It's at right there at the very
yeah.
beginning. And I thought you picked out a really good quote from early in the film that kind of highlights just how serious and how dangerous it is to be out there in those situations.
Yeah. Oh, what was that?
You
Sorry,
you
I don't
picked
have
out the
those
quote.
notes up. Sorry.
Oh no, let me see. It's this is explicit, so fuck, they're killing civilians. I hate this bastard.
Yeah, I
Talking
mean, I
about
found
Putin.
I found that like a really interesting because I mean, so much of especially photojournalists, like we the way that we want to. I mean, I don't know, but we want to be betrayed, but like we don't because again, like we just talked about this on the last episode of the Round the Lens. I don't know which one will come
Mm.
out first, but is that like one of the reasons we can't and that you don't see photojournalists express opinions on specific politicians and subjects and stuff like that often is because of access. Is that
Mhm.
unlike even print journalists who, yeah, they need access, like as in, to get a response. We need physical access. We need to get into a certain spot. Otherwise, we can't literally cannot do our job. You can't if you didn't get into the Trump rally, you can't really cover the Trump rally. You can't at least cover Trump speaking. I've been banned from or not allowed in a bunch of Trump rallies, and so I cover the outsides. And there's it's a very special story, but I mean, like that's one of those things you don't hear that a lot. But it is interesting that they started the film with her basically telling, didn't say specifically Vladimir Putin, but he is the person bombing these people that she's photographing and almost killing her
Yeah.
in the opening scenes of the film. And so it's just I found that like a very interesting because you don't, again, we all like, I mean, if you're in the scrum and you're following, so you hear every expletive, every, complaining about every cop, other photographers, everything like that. But like we work really, really hard to not have that be recorded. And kind of also like we do have I think that there's a unspoken understanding, I guess I'm speaking it, that kind of like, oh, if you catch somebody, talking shit about something, you're not gonna have that. If you're like filming or whatever, and you're like, oh, if you got the scene, but like if you're not going to specifically film that because emotions run hard when you're potentially being shot at or you're being, yelled at by cops to, get off the street or whatever. Or in Lyndsey's scenario, she's literally being bombed by a foreign country. So
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And, what I think is also interesting is that she can be this award-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist,
yeah.
has been doing the work for 20 years or more, and she still faces that uphill battle when it comes to getting certain photos released. I think you explained this pretty eloquently last time we recorded this,
Yes, yeah.
because this is the second take we're doing it, but we're going to get it right this time.
Oh.
But you'd mentioned kind of in your own words what you thought about this, and I thought it was really compelling. So if you can remember what you said about this sort of challenge that, photojournalists face, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean I as a stringer, or not as a stringer, but I mean she's more of a stringer than a whatever. But
She's
as
not a
like
staffer, that's for sure.
what's that?
She's
No,
not
yeah,
a staffer.
as a non-staffer,
She
you
says
do
that.
have this. You do kind of because you're in such a scenario where you're constantly, if you piss off an editor, you whatever, it's you're not going to get a letter from the editor, from the photo editor saying I'm done with you. You just won't get a response. Like I have this scenario. I don't know what I said to the local editor of my paper, but like we had a really good long chat, about them hiring me to do freelance work and stuff like that, and then zip didn't respond to me, didn't do whatever. I applied for a job at the paper, got a no response, got no whatever. And I'm like, okay, obviously I said something online or in the world because I never said anything to them. But anyway, but like you have to run this very careful kind of walk. And so it's like it's the fact that she fought for this photo being used, which would again potentially put a target on her back. Which I mean, maybe hopefully goodwill. Like that's what they were worried about was that it was too that it like right off in the first days of well. Again, I said this before. Russia started the invasion in 2014. They did not start the invasion in 2022. Crimea was taken over. The eastern front of Ukraine was invaded by Russian forces. The war started then, did not start in 2022. Anyway, just always have to put that out there because it's a something that really sticks in my craw.
Yeah.
But it's in the days of this massive explosion of the war, that she got this photo out that or that she took this photo of a woman being murdered by like specifically targeting civilians with missiles. They weren't shooting bases. They weren't shooting, shooting at places that they said that soldiers were. They were shooting a residential neighborhood, which you could see in her video and photos, that was going on. It was just apartment blocks. It was nothing else. And
Hmm.
and that she took this photo, and the editor was just like, well, we didn't want to put out. I mean, at least the excuse that was in there is that we were worried about putting out the woman's face out there
Hmm.
that because of the way the internet and because of everything happens, there's a chance, and also the fact that like her family probably wasn't there, isn't is in the neighborhood, isn't in communication. They will see it on the front page of the New York Times or whatever,
Hmm.
on Reuters, on the feed of whatever. Yeah, I forget which wire she was working for, or which agency she was working for at that point. Um, but it is something that we all kind of contend with. Like, is if you take a photo of the whatever. I thankfully have never photographed someone being killed,
Hmm.
but it is something you worry about that like you take a photo of somebody that's in a really bad incident and their family, especially when it's younger people, like their family might. I had a thing like this happen in Charlottesville, where I took a photo of somebody's nephew who wasn't supposed to be there. And this
Oh
is a
gosh.
more lighthearted version, but he wasn't
Yeah.
supposed to be at the protest. He really promised his mom he wasn't. And thankfully, he was just like, oh, could you not? His brother was like, could you not use those photos? And I was like, don't worry, he's not in any of my edits. Until later on, a couple of weeks later, I saw, oh crap,
My
he was
gosh.
in the edits and he's in this big fold out in Village Voice. I didn't know that. I'm sorry. But I know, it was long after and out of town and everything like that. So like I kept the promise to some level, but so chances are that that's going to be the way that, her family might find out, and that was the fight. But it's like, but it's the first civilian that documented murdered by Vladimir Putin, and I think that, in newsworthy wise, at least, if not, never mind the political aspect of how important that being documented, especially by somebody at that point, not a local freelancer, not putting anyone down. Obviously, the Kiev and Ukrainian journalists there are absolutely incredible, especially the photojournalists. But Lyndsey Addario taking that first photo and getting it out there in the wire, like that is gravitas, and that really said something. And obviously, that photo went completely viral,
Hmm.
in a very, I guess, in a very good way, as much as that kind of thing can go viral
Yeah.
or good. But yeah, so,
Yeah, and again, I think we both have spoken very highly of the film. We both definitely recommend you go check it out. We are going to get into a bit more, the details of some of the story beats. So if you haven't seen it yet, jump off, go to Hulu or Disney Plus. You can find it there. It's a great watch. And now we're going to kind of discuss again more details about what happens during the course of the documentary. Again, it's all public information if you know anything about Lyndsey Addario and her story, but again, if you want to be a little bit surprised in terms of how it's presented in the documentary, go check that out now.
mhm.
But I think it's important to also talk about when we're talking about family is the family tension that she faced.
Yeah,
Again, trying to balance going away for weeks or months at a time to document these stories, and then oh well, she's a mother,
yeah,
right? She has kids at home, and she what was it? The deal she made with her husband, who wanted kids, was like, okay, I'm gonna make kids for you, but I'm gonna go still do my thing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
as a father myself, it's like it really is tough to leave your kids behind even for, a few weeks at a time. Like I went to go to New Mexico for about 5 weeks to do a feature film. And, that was tough, leaving the kids behind. And I went for 3.5 months leaving them alone. And, being in the military, I've been separated them for many times. So it's always tough to do that. But, it's interesting to see how she tried to find that balance,
yeah,
keeping in touch with them and reconnecting when she got back. But I loved how they showed what happens when she leaves, right? What's that like for the husband to have to
yeah.
to deal with that. So I thought that how they showed those two sides of her life was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean they have that. I'm searching for that line. They have
Kids are so much harder than
yes,
war.
about it. Put your butt down. Sorry, my dog is my
Shake
dog
that
is
booty.
restless that
Don't let him shame you, dog. You shake that booty proud.
There you go. If you're watch the
This is a
at
whole
no,
other
no, no.
show
If you watch
now.
this on YouTube or on social media or on video, you get to see my dog Bowden, and he's so fancy with the haircut.
I think we
Uh,
just found some content for the OnlyFans page,
yeah,
but that's
it's only paws actually.
only pause. Yeah,
Um,
right.
he so badly wants to play with me. Anyway,
Oh.
which is why he's standing right there. Anyway, but I can't stop looking. So, um, but the guilt is huge.
See,
Uh,
now if you had to go shoot a war, all you would think about is your dog and how you left it behind, and you'd be
I'm actually
FaceTiming with
going
her.
to Memphis, Tennessee next week for a couple of days, and so I have to leave him behind. So,
Oh.
but yeah, so it's not nowhere near as bad. He nowhere near as bad as Lizzie Dario and whatever. She has two children, and I mean it is fascinating how they laid out. I think that the husband her husband, who's again also a journalist I think he was a Reuters writer, like print journalist, and I could be getting the wire wrong, but he definitely can kind of read. You don't have to read too many lines or see through too much that he really wants her to, which is understandable as you want your wife close by you, but he was just like, I would
Hmm.
really love to have somebody else helping with the kids. Like
Yeah.
it is, the fact that she was very kind of, it seemed, understandably, like she's just come back from 6 weeks, 4 weeks, and
Hmm.
like, and but it was kind of uncomfortable a couple of the moments where I'm like, I can't believe that they let that this kind of let this happen to the point, because I mean she had been kidnapped, I believe it was in Syria,
Mm-hmm.
and he was on TV literally saying you must come back so we can have children and start a family, which is a pretty heavy load to
Yeah.
like that's why you need to come back. Like and it is funny because it's like she's just very much he knew what he was getting into when he married me, which I really respect the hell out of because it's like, I've there's friends that have friends that I have that are like, you knew what you were getting into when you married this person. Like not bad, but just like this is who they are, this is their job, this is their whatever. Like that's the thing. And so yeah, it was just really surprising. I think if even if you're not a photojournalist, but you have somebody who, kind of works in a field that takes them away or whatever, I think that this is an interesting film to watch for that reason because it shows it doesn't they don't spend like a crazy amount of time on that, but it is something that really differentiates this from I would say from every other photojournalist or journalism documentary that I've ever seen, or even really narrative film outside of maybe I guess A Private War is a little bit about Marie Colvin. And she doesn't have kids, she doesn't have family, but they delve into a lot of the fact that she wanted kids and couldn't, and then there's Private War. I highly recommend the film. Really very sad film, but like if you're a person that has dealt with PTSD or that sort of thing, that film I think it's one of the best ones that they ever that really portrays, especially for journalists. Like you see a lot of films about like soldiers coming back dealing with all those kind of like horrible stereotypes, or it's like basically, oh no, if you have
Mm-hmm.
PTSD, you come home and you're violent to your wife or husband or whatever. But it's just like no, this one is like, oh no, no, this one's the drinking too much and wanting to kind of kill yourself and like be left alone kind of like PTS like reactions, which I think honestly is a hell of a lot more um happens a lot more than the kind of becoming a violent person kind of reaction. But yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, that idea that she had to go through the being kidnapped and everything like that, and just again, those are the rigors that you potentially face if you're going to be a conflict photographer, and you're just going to do things that are outside of the protections of like, maybe the military, right? Where we had a lot of folks who were going over,
Yeah.
overseas to cover war, but they were embedded, right? So they had a degree of protection. But she, pursued non sort of state sponsored type of opportunities just so she could be as close to whatever she was trying to capture as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that being away from the family thing, that was really tough to watch. And then, again, how she sort of dealt with that and the inner workings of her family.
Well, I think there's that. I mean, the one, going back to, the fact that the film does a really, really good job about juggling, uh, like her as a photojournalist and her as a woman that is a photojournalist.
Hmm.
And like kind of like there's a couple brief moments where it's like there's a soldier kind of saying like, oh well, she had no problem. What was it? Oh my God, she's tougher. The line was so great. She was tougher than woodpecker's lips, which is a wild. You think about it for a minute, and you're like, yeah, a
Mm.
woodpecker would have if they had lips, they would have really tough lips because they're constantly. But I'm like, wow, that was some. I don't know if he was army or not, but that's some army wisdom there. But um, but
Oh, right. Yes, of course. When she was, they were talking about the commander,
yeah,
the colonel, I think, who was talking about, his experience working with her because she was, documenting in OIF. She was embedded in
yeah.
different units and stuff like that. So she's seen, yeah, both sides.
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
But
I
no, I
mean,
was just the reason I was using it is that like the only way that they kind of mentioned it was that because he, or at least I forget whether he implied or they implied that like there was men kind of implied that there was men that couldn't cut it, like they have to
yeah,
keep up with us, otherwise we're not dragging their ass through things,
right.
and
Yep,
like
that's a
that
very
they had no
important thing.
problem with her, they had no problem,
Hmm.
I mean, and then you kind of like switch that to her telling a story before that in the past I forget how early how mid I think it was like early to mid career
Hmm.
that was like that no editor no woman was good enough for the New York Times as a photojournalist, which is, I mean, like it is shocking. You go back and like, especially overseas, like conflict coverage or whatever, you go through it and you're like, ooh, this is a little uncomfortable that the New York Times, like the supposed paper of record, does not really have any women working for them almost at all. I'm sure there's exceptions, but like it's you'd think that they would have them, but they don't. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think if you're a woman who's pursuing this career field, this is definitely required viewing. Heck, if you're a photojournalist in general or someone who wants to get in this career field, regardless of gender, this is a required viewing, in my opinion, just because of just how starkly and realistically it, showcases what it's like to do the job and
yeah,
the ins and outs of it. Of course, I think the one thing though, maybe to consider though, is that it documents and showcases photojournalism, I think almost not necessarily historically, but quaintly in a way, because it's again, we're seeing things from like 20 years ago
yeah,
to today, and I think the landscape is so much different with regard to making a living doing this. It's hard back then, it's nearly impossible now. So, I think there's a bit of
yeah,
nostalgia for what it was like, that's portrayed there, and there's people like her that are still working.
yeah,
So if you're like, I'm going to get into photojournalism, guess what? You're competing with Lyndsey Addario. You're competing with Tyler Hicks. You're competing with all these people who are still doing the job. And so, there is that sort of thing in a dynamic. But, even when the greats are around, there were people who were trying to, come up in the career field regardless of that. So don't let it prevent you from, pursuing your dreams. Just, keep those things realistic.
yeah. I mean, I think that I mean, obviously, like if you want to like a film about like that, go watch Oliver Stone's Salvador and see the one where he has to like hawk I forget what he has to go around and beg money to get his camera out of hawk so he can drive down in a convertible with his friend. Obviously it's which is actually somewhat based on one of our previous. I believe it's oh my God, I forget Eros's father's name. James Hoagland, famous uh, Central American, mostly Central, famous for Central European or Central European. Oh my God, Central American conflict coverage during the '80s. He was actually murdered there, and which is like it's tentatively kind of like based on his story, but anyway, but it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't obviously get into that. I mean, she's one of the she has a security team where she goes people now she's at that level where she doesn't go to Ukraine without having a security personnel. She drives in with people, other photojournalists and whatever. She does like mention, some of the stuff talking about like when she was in, I think probably when she was embedded, I guess it would have been in Baghdad, and about the kind of the compound. I assume it was Baghdad. I think she just says Iraq, the compound that she was in. But yeah, if you're looking for like kind of like, oh, this is how you get into the industry, or this is how it's like for most photojournalists, this is not it. I mean, she goes home to her very nice place in, I believe, London. I don't know what we don't know what her husband. I assume both. I mean, yeah, we also, something I do wish they would touch upon a little bit more is her like there is a reason why this is like a National Geographic documentary. She is a National Geographic photographer, and so she's done a lot of famous work within that world.
Yeah.
And that's probably I hate to say, I mean, like that's probably where a lot of the money comes from because like they sell books, they sell prints, there's kind of, a whole world of, income that comes in there once you're I think was it rhinos or elephants? I feel bad that I've forgotten. She's won a ton of awards for this. This is
Yeah.
so bad. I don't know her, but yeah, she's covered that world. I would assume if she has, I don't know. I don't know what freelancers in her at her level are making these days. So, but anyway,
I don't know.
like, if you're talking, because but I think that like again, the film is Love Plus War. I don't know of any other docs that like touch upon the family life so much and the struggle that is, especially when the husband is another journalist who knows, it wasn't like some ignorant person or whatever. And so like to the point that I'm like, I actually kind of want to see more. Like I hate reality shows, but I was like, see a little bit more of this.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, but
Yeah, going, just reminds me of the fact that we just had a guest on who, goes back to their vehicle
yeah,
to, that's where they live, right? And so all these things, taking consideration that, again, people have different ways of, living their lives. And so you have to be mindful of that. And anyways, I'm going to give the film a 10 because I don't watch a ton of documentaries and I thought it was a pretty good doc.
Yeah.
What would you give the film?
I was trying to figure out some like if we're gonna do a review scale that has to be like on the f stop. Like so it's oh
Oh, okay, that's creative.
it's a 1.4 in my
Well, would
category.
lower aperture be better
Yeah,
than
well it
higher
has to
aperture?
be. I
Because
mean, come
lower is
on.
faster, you.
Can't be an F22, that's
Yeah, we can do that. So so lower on the aperture is
yeah, yeah,
better.
yeah.
Higher, but then again, higher number. Well, I guess they can. Okay, let's keep it between F what 1.8, 1.4, F
Yeah.
2.8. What do you want to? What's the
So we have 1.4 is a 10 and
1.4
uh I'm
and
trying to
then
think of what the
22? I would
equivalent of
say.
10 would be. I don't know, an F8. We can go
Well,
to
I think we
F8.
need to look at how many like F stops there are.
I don't have my
Now I gotta Google
cameras
F
on right
stops
now.
because I don't know how many stops there. Because I would want to like an equivalent amount
I think
to
we can figure
go.
this out in future episodes. But
Will, we're figuring it out
I would
now.
give it a 1.8, like a 9 out of 10 kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and yeah, again, if I could think of
And real Nas
more,
Mocha.
indeed, yeah, very good book, great artifacts. Yeah, F 1.4, F 2, 2.8, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, 16, and 22. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We got 32 would be the worst. Okay, 32 is complete hot trash garbage.
32 is like the room. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, an F 1.4 is stellar. So you give it an F2, I'll give it an F 1.4, and there you go. Go see the movie Love Press War. It's on Hulu, Disney Plus, and yeah, go enjoy it. Anything else want to say, Zach, before we call it a night
No, I'm good.
on
I'm
take
good.
two of this?
Yeah, let's hope it's only two takes.
Oh my
Yes.
God,
Yep.
yeah. Here we. All right, cool, buddy. All right, well, have a great night, and we'll see you all at the next Around the Lens reviews when we watch them. If you have suggestions for what we should watch and review next, leave them down in the comments below.
Yep.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.